Hello and welcome to Power to the People with me, Graeme Pryce. This video was requested by several viewers and I've finally gotten around to it. I think it's been a while coming. There are lots of public figures that deserve somebody to take a look at them with a bit more honesty than we can expect from our bought and paid for media. And Mrs. Julia Hartley Brewer is certainly one of them. She is, however, a journalist rather than a politician, which is probably a good thing because this is not a woman who we would like making our laws and regulations. She is a woman who likes to espouse her shite, right-wing talking points and agitate the imbeciles among us to believe the most inflammatory and incendiary ideas possible though. So let's take a look at just 5 of the reasons why I think she is a twat right after this. 'Tis Power to the People with Graeme Pryce, where sometimes he's naughty or nice. If you like the vibe, hit like and subscribe. But don't hit the like button twice. Thank you. Julia Hartley Brewer is the daughter of Michael John Hartley Brewer, who unsuccessfully stood as a Labour candidate in Selly in the 1970 general election, and general practitioner Valerie Forbes Hartley Brewer. Far be it from me to incite classism here, but I don't think there was even one kid in my school that had a double-barrelled name, let alone a triple-barrelled name. What about yours? Her parents divorced when she was quite young, though, which could be something of an answer as to why she's such a bitter wrong'un, but, I wouldn't like to speculate. Julia worked her way through several newspapers as a journalist. Strangely enough, even including The Guardian at one point. Obviously, The Guardian wasn't right-wing or dishonest enough for her though, and she eventually spent several years as political editor at the Daily Express. I bet she felt much more at home there. Her beady eye was always on more right-wing wankery than that though, and after a stint as a presenter on LBC, eventually being replaced by Sheila Fogarty, she saw the way the wind was blowing. And she moved to Talk Radio, a station owned by the zombified immortal remains of Rupert Murdoch. In 2019, she moved her hateful output to the internet, launching the Julia Hartley Brewer Show on YouTube, where she would be able to get away with saying far more disturbing and polemic things because of that pesky Ofcom lot not being able to stop her on YouTube. This seems to be the path that many of the right-wingiest of whoppers take in the UK these days, when they get to a point where their more mainstream appearances begin to generate grisly disgust and multiple complaints. They don't heed any of the complaints or criticisms of their character. They just, move over to a platform where the complaints aren't taken seriously or maybe even heard. See the YouTube career of pretend pirate and porn-obsessed piss weaver Russell Brand, for another example. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Do they gather at some crossroads near Tufton Street in the dead of night and sacrifice a northern child atop a pile of burning Guardian newspapers to summon Murdoch, who appears as a ghastly and ghoulish vision, granting them the gift of eternal twattery and right-wing rhetoric forevermore. Julia has jumped on many bandwagons over the years, as these shock jockey journalists tend to do, and managed to offend most minorities. She's probably still working on a few, but one that came to my attention was after the Orlando shooting incident in 2016, when she managed to offend Owen Jones so much with her insistence that a right-wing brainwashed idiot shooting over 100 people and killing 49 in an LGBT nightclub was clearly nothing to do with their sexuality. I'm not a great fan of Owen, but I can appreciate his exasperation in this case. I do wonder if there is some tenuous link to her attending an all-girls school in this matter. Single-sex schools tend to churn out an inordinate number of homophobic hate-mongers, don't they? Despite telling Jones that he had more in common with ISIS members than ordinary people, and mockingly dismissing his suggestion that a man attacking an LGBT nightclub was doing so for reasons of bigotry and homophobia. She insisted her and fellow presenter Mark Longhurst would not apologise, saying, "Neither the Sky presenter Mark Longhurst nor I said anything that was offensive, wrong or bigoted in any way." Yeah, sure, Julia. Ofcom received over 200 complaints about her and Longhurst's dismissal of the blatant and homophobic nature of the appalling attack in Orlando, and my research seems to suggest they upheld about 60 of them, but it can be a bit tricky to get the numbers out of Ofcom sometimes, so don't quote me on that one. Suffice to say that while this was a most brazen and bigoted attack on the LGBT community, she has made it quite clear she's disgusted and dismayed by anybody different to her on many, many, many other occasions, as we're about to see. Of course, with bigoted bellends like Brewer, it's never just about the LGB, it's usually about the T as well. Despite the Trump-tended growing hatred of gay people that seems to be rearing its ugly head amongst the hateful and half-witted, the vast majority of people don't really care that much about who their friends, family and neighbours wake up next to in the morning and what sex they are. So she's moved into TERF territory now and spent the last few years openly attacking trans people. For someone who attended a very prestigious college, Hartley Brewer refuses to acknowledge the scientifically proven fact that sex and gender are not the same thing, and jumped gleefully onto the bandwagon of asking the infuriatingly stupid question that the right are obsessed with these days, and giving out many twatty tweets asking various trans rights activists to define what is a woman. She's gone on Twitter-based rants about trans women not having a cervix many times, which I'm pretty sure none claim to have anyway, and repeatedly misgendered trans people that have had the misfortune to encounter her. She's also apparently offended by the term cisgendered, and she's called it politically correct BBC claptrap. She hides this bigotry and bilious bullshit behind the usual shite these people come out with, and she claims she's standing up for women's rights. It's weird how these people never seem to give a shit about women's rights in any other areas though. I don't remember her ever complaining about the fact that women are paid less than men for doing exactly the same job, or mentioning how many women die at the hands of abusive partners every year in the UK. Pretty sure she didn't mind when the Tories went on a rampage of closing down women's refuges throughout their term in office either. Women's rights. Julia Hartley Brewer scored a record in 2024 when she interviewed Dr. Mustafa Barghouti about the assassination of the deputy leader of Hamas in the wake of the 7th of October attacks in Israel. She was her usual dismissive and bigoted self, which surprised absolutely nobody, of course. But the most offensive section that seemed to generate the most complaints was when she said to him, "For the love of God, let me finish the sentence. Maybe you're not used to letting women talk." Which was clearly a racially motivated jibe, making the previous level of complaints about her treatment of Owen Jones seem somewhat minuscule. Ofcom received over 17,000 complaints about her behaviour during that interview. They didn't do anything about it, though, obviously, as a few years had gone by since the Owen Jones incident, and the Tories had managed to install some seriously right-wing figures into senior positions at Ofcom by then. Though they did take the time to remind the programme to ensure that potentially highly offensive comments are editorially justified. apparently it's fine to be highly offensive now, as long as it's editorially justified. She's also one of those weird wankers that is obsessed with Meghan Markle and has said that she actually finds her disgusting. Of course, even a right-wing hack like Fartinus Brewer knows that she isn't going to get away with open racism on national TV or radio, so she's restricted herself to just manically mocking anything Meghan does with as much prejudice as the current platform allows. In 2021, she was once again the reason Ofcom received another 200 complaints or more for her needlessly and seemingly randomly saying, "I wonder if Meghan has managed to take offence to this photograph that doesn't include her son. She probably thinks it's a racist photograph, even though it was taken before her son was conceived." This was when she was showing a picture of the royal family, including Harry and Meghan, taken in 2018. It really is just any excuse with these people, isn't it? I've got to say, I did wonder if I'd struggle with this one. Believe it or not, I come across twats that have been requested that I do struggle with occasionally. Some of the right-wingiest of wankers in our media bubble really are known for just one or two massive cock-ups that proves they are mental midgets and bigoted bellends. But I was spoilt for choice with Julia Hartley Brewer. So let's just end on a quick roundup of some of the other disgraceful and disgusting actions that have brought her to our attention. She mocked and dismissed Pope Francis calling for action on global warming, saying, "What the head of an anti-science body like the Catholic Church says about climate change is about as relevant as Kim Kardashian on the Eurozone." Obviously, she's a fucking Brexit idiot, so she doesn't like the EU very much, and she would generally use any attempt to diminish it in the years following 2016. In 2018, she posted a tweet containing a photo of the aftermath of the 1988 Armagh bombing, with a text saying that Jeremy Corbyn had paid tribute to victims of the bombing, including the real IRA bombers who may have snagged a nail while planting the explosives. She got some pushback on that one, including from somebody whose son was actually killed in the attack, but she refused to apologise, claiming her tweet was just satire. That's not what I call satire. She had a crack at attacking Greta Thunberg in 2022, saying she would rather see her killed than Andrew Tate. Just days before Tate was arrested on suspicion of human trafficking, rape and forming an organised crime group. She was roundly mocked for that one, but she didn't apologise or take down the tweet. Obviously. We could have touched on her Islamophobic views as well, I suppose, as she set a precedent for blaming Muslim immigrants for things they hadn't done, in exactly the same way that Nigel Farage caused racial rioting in the UK after the Southport attacks by saying, "Another day, another terror attack by another Islamic terrorist," in response to the Bondi Junction stabbings in Sydney that year, which police later confirmed was perpetrated by Australian citizen Joel Cauchy, who was not a Muslim or an immigrant. Are you surprised? I'm not. Thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. I commend you, to be honest. It can get very wearisome and tiring to repeatedly see the utterly reprehensible ring pieces like Julia Hartley Brewer continually given platform to spew right-wing rhetoric and racist shite all over the media day after day after day after day after day after day, can't it? I'm almost glad I've got Julia Hartley Brewer out of the way, and I won't have to spend any more time reading about her obscene outbursts. She still has a platform where many misinformed and mentally malformed miscreants joyfully join her in attacking minorities on a daily basis, and it seems, unfortunately, she will continue to do so. Let's see how many of them pop up in the comments section to leave insults and ramble on about freedom of speech or two-tier policing or far-right not being far-right after all, when what they actually want is just the freedom to be racist, offensive, homophobic, transphobic and generally obnoxiously bigoted for the sake of clicks, views and stupidity. They get clicks and views as well, which is why it's all the more important that we continue to battle against bullshit and try to spread a message of tolerance and decency rather than bigotry and hatred every day. If you'd like to help my personal quest to do so, you can find links to PayPal, Patreon and the Buy Me a Coffee page. Avoiding talk radio at all costs in the description box. And the join button for memberships is, as always, below. Now, that isn't all I have to say. But it is as much of what I've got to say as I can bear to say today. Ta-ra-la. BDI was always on a platform for more right-wing wanker. Why do we use these terms? Right-wing wankery. Right-wing wankery. Right-wing wankery. Anyway.